Welcome back to the Stable Misery Free Family Series. This series is all about helping you learn the system that will empower you to break free from stable misery in your parenting and or your partnership in two key ways. One, by uncovering the unhelpful habits your family has fallen into, and two, by shifting how you show up for yourself. So before I jump in, I want to talk about an email that I received about this series last week. The writer said, I'm excited about this series, but I'm also a bit anxious. My family doesn't seem interested and I'm just tired. Work your magic, Dr. Willis. Now, this email made me think that others of you may be feeling the same way. So I wanted to take a moment to speak to this. So this droplet system, heck, all systems I create rely on the ripple effect, the idea that one drop of the right kind of change can create many ripples within your family and most sacred relationships. For example, in my Triggered to Transform parent coaching program, we allow anyone who is a parenting partner of a member to join. So spouses, grandparents, even nannies can join. But there are times when a member joins and no one in their home is interested in joining. At first, members are always understandably sad or even resentful, but it is amazing to watch them over time, how empowered they begin to feel once they realize that, wow, my consistent small shifts in how I show up and how I think and how I act really do have a big impact on how I feel, how I view my children, how I view my partner, how I treat myself, how I'm treated in my home. This is the effect of small droplets of change over time. I also see the same thing when I work with one-on-one clients or couples clients. They're floored that the change they swore would take years only takes months. I say this not to sell you on T2T or couples package, but to give you some real life examples of how change comes from the right small steps taken consistently. This awareness is part of the quote unquote magic that I yield. So even if your family isn't tripping over themselves to join you in this series, you'll see more of the change you want to create because you will be more of the change you create if you keep going throughout this process. Okay. So let's jump in. As a recap from last time, you are stuck in stable misery because you and those you love adopted some unhelpful habits together that need to be broken. And these unhelpful habits are strengthened by overwhelm, toxic communication patterns, disconnection, and exhaustion. And today, I'm going to guess that you're likely exhausted, overwhelmed, and disconnected in part because you've ignored your needs. Now, this isn't a blame game. We all have experiences in our life that ask more of us than we have to give, especially when we become parents or enter into a partnership where we actually want to give. But when we give more than we receive for too long, our nervous system gets out of whack. Our body and our mind start to break down. And when this happens, your connection with your spirit or your intuition becomes staticky, and your ability to tap into what you need lessens. All of this is a perfect recipe for stable misery. In the last video, however, you learned that stable misery is not the enemy. It's a protective stance that your nervous system and your family system take to help keep your day-to-day experience as stable and familiar as possible, especially when life becomes chaotic, unpredictable, overwhelming, or exhausting. Think of it like a fire alarm. Fire alarms are fine until something's on fire and it thinks everyone's going to die. Then you can't shut it up, right? As long as you are living in a place of overwhelm, fatigue, disconnection, resentment, anger, anxiety, your body and brain will take that as signs that something is on fire. It will sound the alarm and bring in whatever it needs to, cue the stable misery maintenance crew, to keep your situation as predictable, controllable, and familiar as possible. But now that you've turned up your self-awareness superpower, you're ready to use it to activate the second droplet, which will help your exhaustion, depletion, and resentment. So the first droplet you learned last week, self-awareness, helped you become more aware of how you or how often you live in your red, blue, and purple zones. Now, I heard from many of you that red and blue tend to be where you spend most of your time. Guess which zones, however, are more likely to trigger your stable misery maintenance crew? High red, low blue. So the less time you spend in high red or low blue, the fewer signals your brain will receive that it needs to activate the stable misery maintenance crew. Okay, let's bring this home. If you've learned these past couple of weeks that you spend most of your time in red or blue, is it so surprising that you feel stuck in stable misery most of the time? And if you're partnered, I bet your partner is stuck in one of those too. And your child, depending on age, may or may not live there, but they may very well co-regulate with you when you are living there. Okay, so you see how our zones can absolutely impact the entire family. But here's the good news. If your family is stuck in stable misery, a lot of that can be helped when zones in the home are shifted. We'll get to how you can help shift the default zone of your home later, but this week you're going to start practicing empowering yourself to shift your zone, even in the midst of chaos, so you're not feeling dragged around by everyone else's mood. So the key takeaway I want you to carry with you today is this. Your system will not consistently move out of a stable misery state as long as certain areas of your life and relationships feel unsafe or unpredictable. Caveat moment. When I say unsafe, I'm not talking about literal safety issues. If you're in an abusive relationship, your fire alarm is not too sensitive. Your house is on fire. If your family is in crisis, your fire alarm isn't wired wrong. Your house is on fire. Stable misery is likely where you need to be to generate the energy and the plan you need to get you and your loved ones safe. And if you're unsure if your family is in crisis or if you're in an abusive situation, this is where asking a professional can help. Okay? So, in this series, I'm not talking about those situations where your system's reaction is directly proportionate to the situation. So, if you're not in crisis or in an abusive situation, this next step I'm going to invite you to take is going to help you decrease the exhaustion and the overwhelm that tell your brain to sound the alarm and activate your stable misery maintenance crew. The second droplet, where the ripple effect that you seek is, needs knowledge. Now, this is where many folks would say, practice self-care. But if you're anything like me, your brain hears that and your eyes automatically roll. Or maybe you just don't hear it. Somebody says, practice self-care. And you're like, wait, what? Did you say something? Now, I'm not knocking self-care. I say it all the time. Self-care is family care. And I truly believe that. But I think it's kind of overused where practice self-care doesn't really feel actionable anymore. So today, we're not going to talk about self-care. We're going to talk about needs knowledge, which has a built-in next best step system. It's more practical than practice self-care. Now that you know what zone you tend to spend much of your time in, spend this week exploring what you need when you're in those zones. You can probably start making a list now, but I found that most people get a more realistic list when they're in the moment or right after the moment passes and they have time to reflect. For instance, if you're in red a lot, the next time you find yourself there, ask yourself, what do I need right now? What would help bring me just a millimeter closer to purple? Again, we're not making large waves here. We're just creating ripples. Then listen to what the different parts of you offer as a solution. If you're able to, in the moment, experiment with what you hear. Follow your impulse. Okay, when I did this, when I was on the brink of burnout, I would often hear, go lay down. And I was like, oh my God, I don't have time to lay down. Oh, you lay down. But I would follow my own advice and I would take, if only 1 to 2 minutes, to just lay down and see what I noticed. You know what I noticed? I was like, oh my God, this feels so good. I should do this more often. Right? Living in red or blue, we become very good at ignoring our needs. But 1 minute spent meeting your needs is better than no minutes at all. Family invitation. During a calm moment, ask your partner or your children, hey, when you're in red, what do you need? What do you need from yourself? What do you need from me, from the family? What would be most helpful? And see what they say. When I did this for my kids, I learned that, or with my kids, I learned that when my daughter is in her red zone, she actually needs to be left alone for a bit, but we need to be where she can see us, right? Or at least hear us. And then after a little bit, we can come in and ask, like, hey, do you want some company? Do you want me to sit next to you? My son said, just leave me alone in my room. I'll come out when I'm ready. And this was so helpful because we realized we were doing everything backwards. So you can learn so much from those around you with this tiny little experiment. It can seriously help you transform how you engage one another in your family during those tough moments in some powerful ways. Okay, that's it for now. Hit reply on this email or comment below, depending on where you're seeing this, and let me know, off the top of your head, what's one thing you think you need when you're in your red or blue zones? What's one thing that will likely bring you 1 millimeter closer to your purple zone? Do that, and I'll see you next time.